Hello and welcome along to Chatterbox, and in this session I have Adrian Last from Hospital Radio Medway, who's going to tell us about his experience up there and what he does up there. So without further ado, let's see if he's there. And yes, he is. I can see him there on my screen. Hello, Adrian.
I'm here, Gordon. Hello. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting.
That's okay. I can remember the last interview I did with you was probably when you joined.
I can barely even remember that now. It was so long ago.
Several years ago. Can you remember when it was?
I remember really clearly when I joined Hospital Radio Medway, because I'd been badgering my dad to bring me down to the studio for quite a long time. And it just happened that my brother was in hospital. Nothing serious, just a routine thing. And I went down to see my brother. And while I was there, I said to my dad, can we go down? Can we go down to the hospital radio? Because, I was a bit of a radio geek, to be honest. I've always been into radio. And having badgered people like Radio Kent and Invicta Radio and all that to go and have a look around their studios, which I'd also done, he got me down. He took me down while we were visiting my brother, and there was a guy called John Crocker who was presenting the Tuesday Request show at the time, and had a look around. I was very impressed, and luckily from there he was looking for somebody to come and help on the Tuesday night. So John said, look, if you want to come down again next week, then come down. And I was 14 at that time. That was in August 1987, so quite some time ago now.
Yeah.
And it sort of all started from there, really.
How have you found hospital radio in general? Has it helped you in your work life and in life in general?
It really has. And the fundamental principle of hospital radio hopefully remains the same, even though the technology is obviously completely different and has evolved, moved on over the years. But the principle is the same, which is that we're here to entertain and inform patients in hospital, the staff, the guests, anybody that's using the Medway Maritime Hospital, and other hospital radio stations around the country do the same thing. So that's what I'm most interested in, and that's why I do it. And of course, everything that comes with that, which is playing the music, thinking about things to talk about, what's of interest to the listeners and the audience. But it's certainly helped me over the years, not only from kind of engaging, connecting with people that are around the hospital, and even, in the last couple of years when I've been doing the late show, like you're doing here, talking to guests, people that have got interesting jobs in Medway Hospital, has been really good. I've really enjoyed that. But outside of sort of hospital radio, what's been really interesting is it's really helped me in my kind of jobs and my work, because often I work in marketing, and what we often have to do is present to boards and to groups of people and whatever, and stand up in front of big group, hundreds of people. And because I did the hospital radio from an early age, and then some other radio bits as well, it really gets you into that way of talking in quite a relaxed and informal way. So to try and, engage an audience outside, we're not talking about radio now, we're talking about people in their jobs, but to engage people is not an easy thing. A lot of people don't like it. I always get nervous, whether I'm doing the radio or the kind of presentation thing, because it's just, I care about what I do. And I say the same thing to people at work. Over the years, a lot of people have said to me, I don't like presenting. I really don't like presenting to audiences, and nobody does, or very few people do. And I always sort of say to them, look, you've just got to relax, and you've just got to kind of find ways of really keeping their interest. So that's where it's really helped me over the years.
Funny you're saying about presenting. Years ago, I used to be in an organisation called the 18 Plus, which was a group for people 18 to 30.
How many years ago was that?
Oh, that was back in, let me think, early 70s it must have been.
Okay.
I was chairman of the local group, and I was also on the area committee as publicity officer at the time. I remember my first national conference I went to, and our area chairman was standing for the national chairman. So, of course, I was doing the publicity campaign, and I'd come out with a speech and rehearsed all what I was going to do, and thought, yeah, this is no problem, I know what I'm doing. And it was in the Brighton Conference Centre. I don't know if you've been down there, but it holds a fair few people.
I have been there, and that is a big venue.
Yeah, I stepped up to the podium and got my notes out, and thought, right, here we go. And I looked up and thought, blimey, there's just, well, I'd say thousands, certainly hundreds. In fact, it probably was over 1,000, but all just staring at me, waiting for me to say something. And I always remember something from public speaking. It said, in that sort of situation, see if there's something at the back of the hall you can focus on. And there was a big clock there, and I just focused on that and started speaking. But for a minute, it seemed like a minute. Perhaps it was only seconds, but I just froze, because there's all these people just waiting on me to say something. But so things like hospital radio, I think, do help in those circumstances. Of course, when you started all those years ago, it was vinyls then, wasn't it? CDs were about then, weren't they?
CDs were just coming in. In fact, I can remember a jingle that sung something like, "This is on CD," and that sounds really odd now, but it's interesting, isn't it? That, when you started as well at Hospital Radio, we were literally playing vinyl, and a lot of people watching and listening to this will never have sat and tried to queue up a piece of vinyl on a radio studio turntable, and that's an art in itself. Yeah. And so many people just couldn't get that art right. You'd often hear it on the wrong speed, or you have to leave a little bit of a gap for the turntable to start going, and it often goes up, So there's lots of mistakes you can make, but I don't know about you, but it's quite interesting how vinyl has returned. We thought it had gone.
Back. Well, I think over the years it's made sort of several returns, if you like. I know in the disco side of it, vinyl singles, they came out, and that was more or less after vinyls had supposedly stopped. But of course, they were great for people mixing music at that time. Yeah. But and also thinking back as well, you mentioned jingles. Of course, they were on the old cart machines.
Yeah, and look, again, people that don't work in radio that will probably won't have a clue what we're talking about. But we can reminisce, Gordon.
Well, they'll probably remember it from the old 8-track days. Well, those older people might remember 8-tracks.
I'm too young to remember that.
And it was the thing to have an 8-track in your car.
Was it really?
Yeah. Back in the day.
It's funny, really, because over the years, as I sort of said at the start of the conversation, the reason where it all started for me in kind of interest in radio was when my parents used to listen to Radio 1 a lot. So we'd often have kind of Tony Blackburn or Mike Reid on. Yeah. And I can remember about the age of 8, very, very, very vaguely. I used to have a Meccano set, which is again a bit of a kind of old school toy to a certain extent. But I made a microphone stand out of Meccano, and that was literally my first kind of entry into the world of radio. But I was so interested in anything to do with it, and jingles in particular were always something that for some reason I was just intrigued by them. So when, of course, I came down to Hospital Radio Medway for the first time, I kind of knew what I was looking at, because, I'd sort of seen pictures of studios and stuff, and like, wow, this is interesting, isn't it? So there's basically, for those that don't know, a cartridge back in the day, you can still get them, is a plastic box which has got a little bit of tape inside. And on that tape is the thing that you hear that sings, Hospital Radio Medway or whatever. And it's got a little tone on it, a high-pitched tone, so that when it gets to the end, it re-cues itself, so that next time you want to play it, it basically starts the thing again from the beginning. However, what used to happen was that people used to annoy each other by just pressing stop at the end, so that if you think you're doing the perfect link into the news, for example, and you're like, okay, coming up next, we've got a request for Barbara, who's on C1, and then that's after the news, and you press the button, and someone hasn't cued it properly, and you've got it.
Yeah,
that quite a few times, but I was always quite interested in the jingles, and then I think the year after I started, when I was 15, my mum, because she knew that I used to listen to Pat Marsh, the Radio Camp presenter, so she wrote to Pat to see if for a birthday present I could go to Sun Pier, which is where their studios were, and sit in on his Saturday breakfast show. And he said yes, which was just amazing. I mean, that was such a great birthday present. And I sat there and literally, I mean, if we thought we had a few cartridges, I mean, literally that man had the best part of 50 cartridges all that was stacked up in this little stack. Yeah. So it's I'm getting really anorecky now, but I can remember the cartridges down at Radio Kent and having to move them from studio to studio. Of course. But it's interesting, that's another that's another thing where technology's taken over, of course, because we don't have those now. We don't need to. It's just a file which sits on a computer. And again, you've got a computer system and a playout system that you can just load stuff in.
We're spoiled these days, aren't we?
We are spoiled.
But talking about jingles, of course, you're really the voice of HRM.
I know. How lucky is that? That is a very fortunate thing to have been asked in the first place, and to just still be doing it after all these years.
I think you said when you first joined, you were helping John Crocker out. That was probably as a studio assistant, was it program assistant?
Yeah, so that's where I started, really. It was as a program assistant on a Tuesday night, getting the records out, making John a cup of coffee. I seem to remember he was a very talkative man. And not only did he was a good presenter, actually, I seem to remember. And as soon as the mic went down, he just carried on with the story he'd been telling. Literally, I think he pretty much went for 2 hours non-stop talking, which was very interesting for quite a shy boy at 14 who really didn't have much to say.
Yeah, John was one of my favourites at the time as well. John and I got on very well. He was a good chap.
Yeah, he was.
And we've had some characters, of course, down at Hospital Radio over the years. And there's the other thing, I think, people from Hospital Radio have gone on into other radio, whether BBC or commercial radio, and do things with those as well. So it's a good training ground as well, really, isn't it?
It is a good training ground for those that do want to go into radio. And that was exactly the reason why I started in the first place, because I want to be a radio DJ. It's a really good training ground, because what it teaches you is all the things that, not just the technology and how to use a mixer and how to kind of cue records up and that sort of thing. But the really important bit is being able to talk on the radio and to be entertaining and make people want to listen to you. Hopefully people want to listen to you. And that is a hard thing. Anybody should be able to speak on the radio, but it's another skill entirely to keep an audience engaged and entertained and liking what they're hearing. That's another good thing about joining Hospital Radio. And if people are listening that are interested in volunteering, then, I think both of us and all of us would urge them to come and give it a try down at Hospital Radio. You don't have to present. You can go and collect requests. You can get records out, all that stuff. And yes, we do still need people to get records out. People often say to me, if they find out I've done radio or doing radio, well, what do you talk about? How do you know what to talk about? And you just do, because you've just got into this rhythm and got this experience of where you sort of think of things that you can say. And there's when things go wrong as well, you need to be able to fill airtime and be able to think on your feet. So there's lots of radio skills in radio presenting, but there's also lots of skills that you can sort of use outside of that as well.
One of the things, of course, people always relate us to DJs doing discos, but it's totally different, isn't it? I mean, when you're doing a disco, you've got an audience that you can react to and get feedback straight away. On the radio, you've still got an audience, but you can't see them, and there's no reaction from them that you can then react to as well. So it does take a skill on that side of it.
It does, and I know you DJ'd as well back in the day, and it really is a different set of skills. And I've done a bit of DJing, but not a huge amount. And it is a different skill, and it's a great skill. You know, being able to stand up and play records that people want to dance to, and again that you can kind of react to the audience is great. And it is you're right, it is different to radio, where you sort of you're kind of entertaining people but in a completely different way. And often as a radio presenter, you're sat in a room, like the room I'm in here is where I do all of the HRM FM shows that I do, and you know, I'm just in a room on my own, and the way I do it is I always visualize that there's somebody or some bodies that I'm talking to. That's the easiest way. If it's a recorded show, obviously you're even more constrained, because there's, you know, if unless it's going out on a particular day and date, you end up having to try and find generic things to talk about, which is not that easy from time to time. But if it's a live show, then, you know, clearly people can phone in and can text in or WhatsApp or any of the technology that we've got now. And I'll tell you a story. So at one point, I was for a few years working on KMFM doing kind of weekend stuff, and the biggest quizzes and competitions always got people ringing in. You know, you'd only need to say, well, I've got tickets to whatever, and the whole switchboard would light up. But this particular time, I just happened to do it. I was reading something out. I can so vividly remember it. I was reading something out about cotton wool, and it was just a throwaway comment as I got into the next track, and I said, well, why is cotton wool? Is it cotton or is it wool? And press a button, went into the track. Literally, the whole switchboard lit up in a way that I'd never seen it before. And people, there were all sorts of people from, you know, around the local area, basically phoning, oh, yeah, it's cotton. It's not cotton. Yeah, it's not wool. It's cotton. Yeah. And you know, there were a number of people that were saying, oh, it's wool. So that's a really good example where you can say something and actually the audience does have a reaction.
Yeah, and that's particularly if you're doing competitions, you always hope you're going to get people ring. I remember I used to do the competitions for Ian McGregor when he was on Radio Kent. Yeah. And quite often, Ian being Ian would come in and he'd say, I've got an idea for a new competition. Okay, yeah, when do you want to do that? Well, can we do something today? So I'd have to get on the old real tapes, make something up, splice it. Yeah, of course. As well as the jingles we mentioned, you present shows. So is it just a late night show you do now, or do you do other ones as well now?
So I mostly do the late night show, which is some people, a lot of people over the years have called me Last, because my surname's Last. So I just had this idea, let's just call it Lasty Late Show. So that's the main one that goes out 10 till midnight every night. And then I also do Sunday Lunch, which is just a lunchtime kind of music thing, which is 1 till 2 on Sundays. Yeah. And I mostly did that because my daughters were doing Dolphin Beats, which was the show for the kids and staff on Dolphin Ward. And the reason we did it was the reason I started Sunday Lunch was because we used to sit in the studio and we have this kind of, you know, show mostly aimed at kids and teenagers. And then we go into, I can't remember her name now, but I think her name was Jan, and she used to do like a folk show. And it was just such a jolt.
Big jump
from, you know, Harry Styles and Taylor Swift and all that, straight into, hello and welcome to folk.
Yeah.
But I said to Alan, who runs the programs here, how about I do a show which is a bit more of a kind of transition into the rest of the afternoon?
Yeah.
So I do that as well.
You mentioned your daughters there. You've coached them into doing their shows, and award-winning
coaching. It was certainly a lot of badgering and pushing.
Yeah, and an award-winning show, of course, as well.
You know what it's like with your children. You know, they often pick up on, or sometimes they don't pick up on your interests, but on this particular one they did. And I'd taken them down a few times as they were growing up, you know, as little kids, and just for something to do, come down and we can have a little play in the studio and whatever. And then we just had this. I said to them, "How do you feel about doing a show?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, okay, we'll give it a go." But it's just such a nice thing to do as a dad.
Yeah.
Because sort of, you know, they grow up so fast, and having something to do together as a shared experience is great. And I used to try not to, you know, what I wanted them to do was to do the show themselves. And that was how we set it up. So I very rarely appeared on air, apart from the thing that they liked to do here at home, which was Dad's intro quiz. So we used to just muck about at dinner time, and they came up with the idea, why don't we do an intro quiz and you can answer the questions? So that's the only time I ever used to appear on air.
Obviously, we were talking earlier and you were saying how hospital radio had benefited yourself. And with that in mind, why do you think people should volunteer for a Hospital Radio Medway?
I think there's 3 reasons why people should join Hospital Radio Medway. Number one is it's all about the audience, and we're here to entertain and inform everybody that's here in the hospital. And that goes from inpatients, outpatients, guests, visitors, staff, who are very supportive of us, of course. So that's the principal reason for joining, is that you can be part of this amazing operation at the Medway Maritime Hospital. Second thing is that obviously joining HRM, you're part of a group of like-minded, brilliant people. And I've met so many lovely people over the years, and it's a great group to be part of. So if you're looking for something to be part of and to socialize with other people, then this is absolutely it. And then I think probably the third reason is if you're interested in actually going into radio as a full-time career. It's a long shot, of course, because there aren't that many jobs available in radio full stop nowadays. But it's certainly a very good training ground for certainly young or old people. It doesn't need to be really young people to learn about radio. And there's so much joy in presenting shows as well. So I would absolutely recommend it to everybody. I've done it for, well, way over 35 years now, and it never ever loses its sparkle.
Great. Well, thanks very much for joining us today, Adrian, and telling us all about your experience with Hospital Radio and Hospital Radio Medway. And we look forward to hearing your programs and any future programs that you may do.
Yeah. Thanks again, Gordon. Thank you for inviting me to come and talk on your show. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Thanks very much, Adrian.
Thanks, see you soon.
If you'd like to hear more episodes in this series of podcasts, or indeed see our other podcasts, search for our podcast website in your browser, hospitalradiomedway.captivate.fm, or look for our YouTube channel, Hospital Radio Medway.
There's 4 easy ways to listen to HRM FM. Go to our website at hospitalradiomedway.co.uk and click to listen now. Go to NHS Wi-Fi on your device and find us there. Say,
play Hospital Radio Medway
to your smart speaker, or switch your radio on and go to 87.9 FM, the radio station for the Medway Maritime Hospital. This is HRM FM.